Do you have any switches in your house that sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, or you have to run to the other side of the room, flip that one on, and then this one works? If that's the case, you have a bad three-way switch. Three-way switches operate entirely different from regular switches. They seem to go bad at a higher frequency. Sometimes you just have to replace them. Okay, these are three-way switches. So on a common typical switch, you have an off and on. On three-ways, there's really no such thing as an off and on. It's just two different positions. So no matter which side of the room you're flipping the switch, the light will turn on. But what's happening inside a three-way switch? This black common screw always has power. It's always live on switch 1. Now, when you flip the switch, it's always connecting either the traveler number 1 or traveler number 2. So it's actually just toggling back and forth. So it's just a switch. It's like a railroad track changing directions, and that's all. That flow of electricity will turn on your light fixture no matter what position the switches, the opposing switches are on. We're going to replace our defective three-way switch next, but let's show you what's actually going on inside your wall. The black terminal on switch 1 will be the live current coming from the wall. Traveler number 1 will connect to traveler number 1 on switch 2. And then with the red wire, yes, you have an additional red wire on a three-way circuit. You're going to connect switch 1 traveler wire 2 over to switch 2 traveler wire 2. So as long as these two traveler wires are connected in the same direction, it will work. Lastly, your black common screw on switch 2 will go to the light fixture and make sure the light turns on. This is the most typical common wiring design. There are a few different ways to do it, but this is the most common. Switch number 1 to switch number 2, switch number 2 to the light fixture. All right, turn off the power. Now with a little experimentation, you can actually figure out, say you have two different three-way switches to one light fixture, probably the most common design. You can actually experiment and figure out which switch is the actual bad switch and replace just that switch. But three-way switches really aren't that expensive. They're just a little more expensive than a regular switch. So I always like to replace both. That way you don't put a new one in and then the other side of the room goes bad a couple months later. Just go ahead and replace both three-way switches and you're good to go for another decade. Okay, here they use the quick connector, so I actually find it easier just to cut that away and get to the new one. Now, before you start ripping wires out, you might want to be mindful of the current position. Assuming the previous person wired your house correctly, you just are swapping out the new switch, the new three-way switch for the old one. So the wire positions will all be exactly the same. This was the upper right, common black. The red is the traveler, lower right, and so forth. Okay, here's the new three-way. There really is no up or down, but we're going to put it in the same configuration. So we're going to start with the ground. And then since we cut those wires, we do need wire strippers to get our connector back, or conductor back. Okay, so the black hot will go on the common. There's a little pressure plate. You just put the wire. It doesn't have to be curved on this one, just straight under the pressure plate. This is a Eaton three-way switch. And then your travelers, you're just going to match them up to what you had in the wall. And it does have to match up with switch 2, depending on what side is the red traveler, what side's the black traveler. So those again are called the travelers. That's a terminology for three-way switches. Under the pressure plate, tighten it up. It's a nice outlet. Okay, we have the ground, the common, hot on switch 1, the two travelers. Now you can fold your wires back in your box, and we're going to repeat the process on outlet number 2. Here you can see the size difference. This is a common on-off regular switch, open and closed, or open means off and closed means on, and then three-way. So you can see the difference in sizes. There's just a lot more going on in three-way switches. They're a little more expensive and they seem to break down more often. I love these more industrial outlets and switches that have the pressure plates that you just put a straight conductor in and you don't need to hook them anymore. It's just a better design. And then the last of the Traveler. This is switch number 2 right before the light. Tuck those wires safely back in. Okay, new three-way switch installed. Now you test it, check it independently from each side of the room. As long as the light is turning on and off independently from each side of the room, you've done it correctly. Good job. I bet you can do it yourself.